All right, hey guys, Jason here. What we're going to be talking about today, can you mix and match broadheads on your shooting setup? What has to be done to do that? Sorry, I got dirt all over here because I was making a bunch of videos with these and throwing them around. And honestly, I just spent the last whatever it was, I don't know how many minutes recording this whole video, and it had the camera on. You would be amazed at the kind of stuff I deal with on a regular basis. But we're making it now again, and what we're going to talk about is, can you mix and match broadheads at the same time? Do you have to shoot the same one? Is it going to hurt anything? The answer is no, it's not going to hurt anything if you follow some rules. There are some things that you are going to have to understand to this. Now, basically, as a purpose here, if you can see these, every one of these heads on here I can shoot. They're all set up for me to shoot. And we have different reasons for that. But there are some things that you got to take into consideration when you're doing this as to what level of how you want to go when you look at the different shapes that we have between all of these heads and you weigh those considerations. Okay, there are some variables. So we need to talk about that. So the weight, okay, you want to make sure that your arrows, your heads are going to weigh the same so that your arrow weight that you have doesn't change. If you put a lighter or heavier broadhead on here, you will change the stiffness and the flex in this arrow. When that arrow is shot, the head's not moving as the string hits the nock and goes, and this arrow is going to flex as it comes out. The weight of that head on the front will change the dynamic spine of that arrow and how it is going to fly, so you have to understand that. Now, that is within reason. There are some weight things. For example, this is a 250 grain razor broadhead that I shoot all the time that I have on here, and this makes for a 720 grain arrow. Given the fact that I have a 720 grain arrow with 450 grains up front, I can also put this 300 grain on here and it will fly the exact same. This is 50 grains heavier, but 50 grains on a 720 grain arrow makes no difference, where 50 grains on a 400 grain arrow will make a tremendous difference. So all that kind of stuff becomes relative, but for the most practical purposes, let's take him out of the equation and just understand that as long as they're weighted the same, yes, technically, you can shoot them. We have some issues there. First one is we have to tailor the head to the animal we want to shoot if you're there. That's why people usually do this mixed bag thing. A lot of people will like to shoot a big head, something like this big A-boy or whitetail head that's massive in size, and they'll want to shoot something like this for whitetails. Because why it's even called the whitetail, because it's a big, huge cutting diameter, and then they'll want to turn around and shoot something skinnier, like this other A-boy or this, I don't remember which one this is. Is this the Wapiti? Yes, this is the stainless steel one-piece Wapiti. Here is also a glue-on Wapiti, but they will shoot something, go from something wide to something skinnier for heavier, dense animals. Hogs, for example, things like that, or if they're a whitetail hunter going for elk, they're going to want something that they feel that they can get more penetration with. They're going to go with something skinnier. Many people down here in the South love the Simmons broadheads for whitetails because they're basically like throwing an axe at them. That cutting diameter of those things is massive. And like I said, they'll go with something like this where it's a big cutting diameter. A lot of people will be afraid to shoot a hog with something that wide and that big, because of how tough a boar hog can be with the shield and all this stuff that's on there. Might be kind of hard to penetrate through with that. So they'll go with something littler and skinnier and a more 3-to-1 ratio kind of head so that they get that penetration. That is one reason that a lot of people will change heads out. Okay, makes perfect sense, depending on what you're using. Another one is you see, not often now, but it used to be very popular. You go back 20 years ago, a lot of us did it, but that's a rainy day arrow, okay? So back then I would run like this Magnus 1, okay? This is the original Magnus heads that I've killed a lot of animals with, 1.5 inches wide. And then I would put the 1.25 inch wide on there for rainy day ones. Today, for example, somebody might run like this A-Boyer. If you're sticking with A-Boyers, because I got two versions here, run a A-Boyer big bone head like this, 1.5 inches wide, and run that, because on a normal day, you have the feathers here that can steer this arrow perfectly with that head on there and put it right where it needs to be. But then on the same note, they'll have another one and go to the Wapiti, which is 1/4 inch narrower, still the same length, but now it's a skinnier head. and they'll run that on their rainy day arrow, which is a day where their feathers are going to get wet. When those feathers are matted down, there's less steering capability on the back of this arrow as there is on the front. So going with a narrower broadhead means less wind planing and less resistance of that. You're going to have a better chance that arrow flying true rather than that broadhead taking that arrow off because you don't have the fletching surface area on the back when they're matted down. So again, a lot of reasons to go through different heads. Another one is that you might be shooting, for example, you're deer hunting and you got a razor broadhead on here like this one. These are the ones I use all the time, those 250 grain razor 1.5 inch wide heads. You might have this on here, but these are $100 for 3 of them. Love this head. One of my favorite head ever. Okay, then you take this and you shoot it at a deer and it goes through the deer and it sticks in the ground and it stays right there and you know where your arrow and your head is 99% of the time. Deer runs off, it's stuck in the ground right there, you're good and set. You did not lose your broadhead. Same with if you're bear hunting, whatever it is. If you're tree stand hunting, you have this, it sticks in the ground, it stays there, and it's good. But then you come out and you go hog hunting or something like that, or you go small game hunting even, things of that nature, whatever the case is, but you're going to, where there's a chance you're shooting from the ground and you very well could lose that arrow, might be worth going to something that's still an amazing head that doesn't cost as much money, like the Ace heads, the Wikis, things of that nature, where you can get them for less money, half the price of what some of the more expensive ones are. Even the A. Boyer heads, these are very similar in price to what you're talking about for a razor. They're not a whole lot different in price and expense there. So, going with something cheaper in some of those situations, hog hunting, squirrel hunting, things of that nature, rabbit hunting. Rabbits, you can't, it's hard to kill a rabbit with a judo. Much easier to do with a broadhead. So you have these variables that you can come into play with, and you might want to change that up. Now, is there anything besides the weight that's going to matter? The answer to that is yes. 2 things. One is the testing. Okay, you have to test it and see. Now, if you start off with a narrow head and then you're planning on adding a wider head into the mix, then you're going to have to make sure you test it and that your arrow is going to fly good with that wider head. There's more surface area on a wider head than there is on a narrower head, which means you are going to have more wind planing on this head than on this head. When that happens, you want to make sure that your arrow is set up and tuned well, your fletching and stuff is good, and it's going to be able to steer that shaft, steer that straight, and that your fletching can overpower the head. And it's going to fly right. Very seldom do you, if you're already shooting a wide head, do you have to test a narrower head that's the same weight. Usually it automatically works. But if you're going from a narrow to a wide, test it. You also need to test any vented heads. These are vented. Okay, they have holes in them. Those holes are notorious for whistling. You'll shoot it and it'll go like that when it shoots, okay? And that's because of the fact that depending on how aggressive your fletching is, you might be spinning really fast and you're getting that wind noise that's coming through these vents and is causing that to whistle as it goes. You'll hear that. Maybe not so extreme, maybe it is so extreme, but you want to test if you're running vented heads. And not just test it once, you want to test it in a few different wind conditions. Because you might test it on a calm day and it makes no difference. Then you might try it again or you might be hunting and it might be a little windier and now you're going to catch that. Okay, you might be practicing in a straight on wind, but a crosswind will. So if you're shooting vented heads, it's important that you're going to test them a little bit to make sure they're going to stay nice and quiet for you. So my advice, I don't shoot a lot of vented heads. I love them, but I don't use them a ton because of the noise factor that I get from the way my fletching is set up. Your mileage may vary. Like I said, they've been popular for 100 years. People love them, and most people don't have any of those issues. So, but it is something that you got to take into consideration and see. Now, the other one is your point on. If you are a point on shooter and you're used to shooting with a field tip on here that you're going to put on here, now a little tip for you. It doesn't matter how you're doing. If you're a point-on shooter, forget the point of the arrow and start using the insert as your point. So don't come in and line that point up and put that point right where you want to hit it. But, wow, that's actually bent. That's interesting. That tip is bent. I thought so. I hit a rock with it the other day pretty good, and it's actually got a little bend in it, and I even got a good scuff on my arrow, but that tip has a slight bend. We're going to have to fix that, change that out. But you don't want to use the point of that arrow as reference here at the point. Use the insert that is here. Let that insert where the shaft meets that head be the point that interests you. That way, when you have different lengths of this, when you go to, from there, say you go to this longer head, when you put this on here, and now you look at it, the point of this arrow is at a different spot than what the point of that field tip was. And the point, you know, when you're looking at these point lengths, these head lengths, so you can see how far out that difference is, where it's going to offset that. Look at the difference here. Okay, so you don't want to use the point, you want to use the back of the head. So that's going to be a big factor for you. If you don't, your shots are going to be off, because you're going to be taking that arrow and you're going to be holding it up too high or down too low based on the length of the point that is on there. Imagine going from this one to this one. Okay, I mean, you don't want to play that game. So learn to use the right reference point, which for me, in my opinion, is where the back of the, and again, I just started doing this. I've always been an instinctive shooter, but now that I am anchoring differently, I did a video on this, but I am coming in and anchoring ring finger in, and I am lining that up and taking that shot where I can look right down that arrow. I'm still shooting instinctive a lot, but this gives me a reference point, and I'm trying it and learning it. We'll see which way I stay going. But by doing that, I use where the insert meets the head as my point of reference. I am not pointing the end of the arrow, which my arrow actually sits like that, but I am not pointing the end of the arrow. I'm pointing right where that insert is and coming in and looking right there like that for that reference. So you'll be much better off if you do that. So there's some ideas for you on different heads to use at different times, but you can. It's very easy to pick any weight head or any head that you want, any style or size that you want, as long as it weighs the same and you test it and it flies well. And there's nothing wrong with mixing them up and having different ones in your quiver. They're all going to do an excellent job for you. Any questions, put them down below. Thanks for watching.